Oklahoma. She's going to speak to us today about the intersection of race and politics and inequality therein. Right? Oh yeah, thank you. I'll move that out of your way. Ooh, look at this.
Look at that.
That's even on. Okay. Hey. All right. I'll stand next to you. Andrea also serves on the board of a number of organizations that work in the civic space. A hero by, I think, all accounts. So I'll turn it over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you all so much. I don't think I needed this mic, but I'm thankful. Thank you all for taking the time to spend your days with us and also for listening to my words. Let me just share a little bit about me. I am originally from Northern California. I went to UC Davis for my undergrad. You can see my degrees there. I went to the University of Michigan for grad school. And here are some of the places I've been. And so I've seen a lot of this country. And so when people ask me, what are you doing there, girl? I'm like, the work, okay? We're here to get stuff done. And so I do love it. I don't let people talk bad about Oklahoma. I'm not from here, but I appreciate that I'm in spaces like this. I serve on a bunch of boards, which I'll get to. But at every turn, for everything I've wanted to do since I've lived here, which is 4 years next month, people have been willing to work with me, and I think that's really great. And so I do appreciate that. And I know I'm talking to a particular audience right now, but thank you so much. Again, I'm on the board of I'm the president of the board of Sally's List. I'm the vice president of the board of Northeast Oklahoma City Renaissance. I'm a member of the board of the ACLU. And then for 2 years, some of you might know me, that I served as a co-chair for the Human Rights Task Force in Oklahoma City to bring back our Human Rights Commission. Those were hard things. And people that were there for the work know how it almost broke my spirit, but we were successful. And so if you have an opportunity to support that board as they do their work, it means a lot to me. So if you have it in your spirit to do that, please do so. I wrote a book. I just put this here because, I don't know, I spent so long on it. I just like to show it to people. So I did write a book. And then if you Google me, which sometimes people do, I've been in a lot of places. And I'm just sharing this because I want you to know that in addition to my academic life, I'm really in the community and I'm really trying to get my work out there and trying to do things. And so this is very academic, what I'm going to talk to you about, but I'm not just an academic. So I want to just have my street creds here. Okay. So I'm working on a project right now called Demographics Aren't Destiny, and I thought it would be useful to sort of show some of that and to get into some of the nitty-gritty, because the title of my talk is, what are the challenges to minority candidates, sort of minorities in politics, people of color in politics, those types of things. So hopefully this will help get us there. So, we care about representation, I think, right? And part of that is because we think in our minds that once society reaches a certain level of diversity, let's say, that we, through elections, can gain what we call descriptive representation, which I'll define in a second. And we care about descriptive representation because we think it means substantive representation. So descriptive representation, my representative looks like me. And in the world that we live in today, there are lots of ways that your representative can look like you. We might think about race, ethnicity, gender, sex, are we trans? Are we members of the LGBTQIA community? Do we share the same religion? Are we from the same class background, age? So I'm not saying that you have to pick the one that I'm talking about, but this is just sort of that you think your representative looks like you because you think that they are going to do things that are in your best interest. And that's why we care about these things, right? It's not just so we can say, oh my gosh, we elected Andrea, she's black, she's a woman. If I don't do anything that's good for black people or women while I'm there, you're going to be disappointed in me and you're going to pull the accountability mechanism, right? And so when we think about things, when I talk to groups and they say, oh, what's Tim Scott going to do? I don't know, nothing with black people because that's not his priority. So if you think that just because a black person is running that black people are going to be like, oh my gosh, no, because we still want that descriptive representation because we care about that substantive. And so you can be descriptive without being substantive, and you can also be substantive without being descriptive. The beauty comes when it's a little bit of both, right? I think that's why we care. So I came to this project, and so this is like the front end of a book project that I'm working on. And so in 2013, Business Insider published a list of the most and least diverse cities. And the list caught my attention. Oh, sorry. This is what they mean. It's not quite that, but that's what they think it is, right? So they looked across the cities' demographics and they said, oh my gosh, what cities sort of look like it's about a quarter black, a quarter white, a quarter Latino, a quarter Asian, right? That's sort of their rough cut. And then other cities where really one group is dominant. And here we care because, again, those expectations, but really this idea that you would think in those diverse cities, what will we expect? A very diverse council. And in the least diverse cities, right, it's just one group, right? So that's just an empirical question. But the list caught my attention because when I was born, I lived in number 1, I lived in number 2, and I graduated high school in Fairfield, right? So when I saw this list, I was like, oh my gosh, it's where I'm from. Let me find out. The least diverse cities, here they are. And here I want to say this doesn't mean all white, right? This could be that this is a majority Latinx city. This is a majority black city, right? So it just means that one group dominates. So of course I'm a social scientist and I'm going to show you a slide that no one should ever do, but I just have to do it. But anyway, but then there's still 100 cities, right? So sort of where do people live, right? So you can put those cities in. Some cities are going to be duplicates. You can see Oklahoma City is in there, probably higher up than it was at the time. But right, so this is just an empirical question. Are the most diverse cities producing the most diverse councils? And are the least diverse cities producing the least diverse councils? That's just an empirical question. So that's what we did. So you go to the city, you get their population, you figure out who's there. Obviously, you can't account for everyone. This is sort of the rough cut. You create a data set, which is super fun if you're a social scientist, and you say, let me look at this council. So these data were created, it's a little old now, but in 2017. So you just code. You go there, you say, there's 10 people on your council, 3 of them are black, 3 of them are white, 4, right? You just do that. And then you can just create a measure, right? It's a rough cut. So you can take the percent of the Latinos, let's say on the city council, divided by the number of Latinos on the council and the total council seats, right? And so then you can say, council minus population is a rough cut measure of representation, right? So that's what we're doing here. So I won't spend too much time, but again, right? Again, if the number's negative, that group is underrepresented, right? Because their population doesn't match their representation. If it's positive, right? The council's, if the city's 40% black and the council's 60% black, blacks are overrepresented on that council. And then there's some area in between where you say, it looks good. It looks like the city, right? So we have data for 125 cities, and this is what we find. So regardless, and again, I'm giving myself an opportunity, right? So 104 cities, whites are still overrepresented on their city councils. There are only 125 cities, y'all, right? So, right, sort of thinking about those things, right? And so the reason I care about this is because we have spent so much time thinking if we can just elect the right people, but it's hard to elect the right people, right? So fair enough, right? These are just some more cuts of that, right? So then I just look at only the ones that are the least and most, right? But you know what, that's fine. And you could be thinking to yourself, but Dr. Benjamin, there are lots of reasons. Being on city council isn't even that great of a job. Most places you make like $1 a day. So, and that's fine, right? But still, in any community, you would think someone wants to do it. But there are still challenges, right? So who wants to run? That's a good question. Not everyone does. Sometimes the rules make it hard, right? And so we know that voter turnout for communities of color lags. There's voter suppression. I just did an interview on Friday with someone about these tactics. And also, when communities run a candidate from their own community, they tend to support them. So if your community is small, you can't expect 5% of the city. You're not just going to elect this, right? So there's these challenges. I'm not saying that they aren't real, but still. And then also, sort of to my Tim Scott example, right? Like, okay, you can't just run on wild things and think just, oh my gosh, my community is going to support me, right? There needs to be an issue alignment, so that's fine. So there are these reasons why we don't see what we want or we think we should, right? Again, some of those cities on the list are very diverse and they still have not produced diverse councils. And that's why demographics aren't destiny, but that's fine. So that's just one thing. Sort of talked about these. But again, right, we care, this is why I do this work. I care about it because we want descriptive representation to be in substantive representation. In the book, which I won't get into here, one of the challenges is that in some cities, groups are elected, or city council members are elected, but not from support from their racial ethnic group. And so that sort of throws a wrench into this idea. So we'll come back to it. But anyway. And again, I only care about this because I want to know about effective policymaking, right? Like at the local level, whatever level we're at, we want it to be effective. And of course, we know living in this state, well, numbers matter, so we can talk about that if we want in Q&A, whatever. But of course, most people don't care about cities. I do, but anyway. But so then there are other ways to think about diversity. So I want to just show these stats. We are living through one of the most diverse Congresses right now, right? We did it. It got there, closer, right? Closer than it was. We did something, right? But it doesn't look good, and it's definitely not parity because it should be half if it was, right? Especially for women. So we're not there yet. And then obviously for me, I care about women of color being elected. Of those 150 women in the current Congress, right? This is it, right? So again, we are moving towards a more diverse country. We are talking about issues that we haven't talked about before, and yet even our Congress looks like this. Right, so we just, it's not just the city, it's not just at the national level. Right, sorry, so these are fine. Because then we have to think about our state. And I know this is maybe hard to read, but we're not surprised by anyone here. I mean, Oklahoma is still majority white, right? It has gotten a little bit more diverse. You can see some of the numbers have shifted. This is just basic census data. But when we look at our legislature, y'all, it's not even close to where you might think it would be, could be, should be. It's just not where you want it, right? And and that, so these are the things, right? And at the same time, I'm saying that with again, there are challenges. Who? I know there are people in here who have this job. Thank you for your service. But who wants that job? That job is not the best job. It is nothing personal, and I don't want to dissuade anyone. But that is a very hard job right now. And for that, I truly thank you for being willing to do it, but who wants it, okay? So I understand why, especially for our communities of color, you're thinking to yourself, there are 1,000 other places I could be that I could make a difference. And that place at Lincoln and 23rd is not the place that I can make a difference, right? You have to really commit to that. You have to, and I appreciate that people do, but it becomes a thing where it's like, okay, okay, I can go do that job or I can work on these other things, right? So I'm not saying that just because we have population change that everyone's going to want to run for office. But I do hope that through the things that we're doing here today, the conversations, that it makes it less of a, like, you at least think about the job and you're like, well, maybe, instead of like, absolutely not, which is my general answer to those types of questions. It's just a hard job. Right, and again, even when we think about women in the state, it doesn't look good, y'all. It's absolutely terrible. I think I was in Sally's List office. We're 44th on women in the legislature right now. There are really 50 states, y'all. We are at the bottom. It's not good, right? And so, again, for someone who cares about those questions about representation, those questions about descriptive and substantive and the place where they come together, how can we fix that, right? How can we get to a place where it looks at least more like our population? That's not going to fix everything, right? But is that something we want to move towards, right? And so we might say, well, why is this, right? And we talked about this, right? There are just barriers. Even with racial voting, again, a community that doesn't comprise a majority of the district, block it up, you can do what you want together. It's not going to translate necessarily into a win, and we'll get to what you probably need to do. For candidates of color, if campaigns become racialized, that can really alienate those candidates. It can cause a backlash wherein white voters show up to make sure that those candidates don't get elected. We can only account for a certain amount of candidate quality. So, I serve on the board of Sally's List because I think that we have the opportunity and the knowledge and the resources to improve the quality of the candidate so that they are viable. Those things matter. But we have a pipeline problem, right? And if everyone has a bad attitude like me and says it could never be me, we have a pipeline problem, right? So we do have to work on that. We have to think about what are the steps that would take for us to get a group of people where you just have a bench and, okay, that person's terming out, good, because this person is next, right? But we have to work on those things. And again, we might think about the pipeline going up. You could think about the pipeline going down. Oklahoma's obviously in a very unique position because of the term limits at the state level. That creates more opportunity in some ways, right? And we can talk about whether or not that's always good, right? But there's a limit on the state service, right? So you're only going to get your 12 years and then you're done, so that either you move local or you move national, right? Those are things to think about. But candidates of color really have to build coalitions if they want to be successful, right? That's just the only thing that they can do. And so at the local level in particular, again, we're going to think about the composition, who's there, who might be amenable. You got to think about your campaign strategy. Again, especially if you're a candidate of color, you probably don't want it to be too racialized. Again, that can cause problems. And then just any circumstance of an election, right? Sort of things can happen. So those things matter. I won't get into this too much, but there's a couple different types of coalitions that are particularly recommended for candidates of color. And so those are sort of those things. Sorry, people. I can make these publicly available. They are not proprietary. But even, I guess even looking at this, right, is, for Oklahoma, depending on what level, that conservative coalition could work here. I don't know how sustainable it is, right? And there are local examples where this has worked, and we can talk about that. So what can you do, right? And so I like to think about things. I think, I'm so glad Generation Citizen is here. I am a college professor, but there is something like, how can we help young people see the importance, right? I think that's really important things that we can do. If there are young people in the room, you can get involved. You don't have to run for office, but you can serve on a youth or a county city board, right? That you can sort of do those things. If you aren't registered to vote, if you're young, encouraging people that when they turn 18, that's something they should do. Obviously, I'm going to say vote local because I study local politics, but also support local journalism, right? So some of the research has shown that when newspapers have, as newspapers have diminished, engagement with local politics has also diminished because no one's covering it, right? So who knew that their city council election was going on, right? So that's just empirical, that's data driven. If you feel compelled, volunteer for a campaign, help someone so that, again, even if it's not you that wants to serve, that you support someone who does. And that's it. I did put all my socials here just because I didn't know who was going to be here. I was like, is it the young people? I don't know. So anyway, and then you can see my email. So obviously, if you want to contact me, I'm available. I don't want to take up too much of Adam's time, but if people have questions, I probably can answer a few. Questions, comments, concerns?
Where do you see the most interest in a particular age group that you're attracting, or running for office?
I think, again, and we're lucky to have elected officials here with us today, but I do think young people are starting to see that they can make a difference and that it is possible. Still, though, I did have some other data, but it was not very good, but the Oklahoma State Legislature is still, on average, very old. So, just the average age is very high. So we haven't brought the age down, but we could. And then other thing, right, so, sorry, my political science brain is like, well, there are things that we can do, but really, given the way the districts are drawn right now for both state and national elections, it's hard to think about, well, could we get, a ton of young people to run? Maybe they could run, right? But sort of the outcome is almost predicted by the voters that were selected based on where they live, right? Like people are picking their voters, not voters picking their elected officials. So that's gerrymandering. For us, though, like with Sally's list, I feel like it's a diverse group. It's not, so we see people that are sort of interested at all levels. Yeah. Other questions, comments? Yes?
So you had a number of great reasons why there are challenges for people to run for office. One thing that I didn't see that I'd like you to comment on is about resourcing in their own lives. The reality is so many underrepresented communities, the folks who are in those communities are still struggling to put food on the table and don't have time to take a detour to public service.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And so I think we, I think at every level, but particularly the local level, that's I think where it becomes right, because you want to be on the city council for $1,000 a month and you're working 80 hours a week, that's not sustainable. And so the question then becomes, do we want to professionalize council? What would that look like? How much would we pay them? Would that increase the diversity of people that are willing to do the job? It could. Could it also create a situation where it gets worse than what it is right now, which is now you're paying me a lot more money and I'm still treating it like it's a 4-hour-a-week job, right? Like, Yeah, so those are real concerns. I think even at the state level, you have to be in a place where you can sort of accept that salary and have a different type of job that allows you to still, for how long, 5 months, you can't go to your job every day, right? So these are barriers for sure. I think, I'm not from here, so I try not to be, I don't know what the state would think about, or if the voters of Oklahoma would think about, or even within a local municipality, sort of changing those incentives. My sense is that they would say, no, this is the max amount that we're gonna do. And again, there's research on both sides about what happens to legislatures when they become more professionalized. Some people view that as a good thing, some people don't, right? So I'm not here to say that the answer is so cut and dry. But it is a challenge, right? And it is, and and again, within the person's own self, they sort of have to be committed. And obviously I'm thinking about like Representative Alonso, right? Like so young, willing to serve, you're committed to those things, and that's so thankful. But not everyone's gonna do that, right? So we have to think about what are even the incentives that we're creating. I think the current incentive structure is sort of like, let old people do it. Right, like let it be your second job, let it be your retirement job. I kiki for 4 months, I go to the legislature, but right, like that's the way it seems, right? Or in city council, it's not a real job. I have a real job. I come here on Tuesdays every other week, and that's what I do, right? So that's sort of the way it's set up. I think we have council members, at least in Oklahoma City, who obviously work more than that. They're not just there for the meeting, right? And so they are not being compensated extra, right? So it's a bad incentive structure right now. I don't know if that, but. Yeah. Yes.
Are you aware of any places that have a different incentive structure that have been professionalized?
Yeah.
Maybe this is how those work in those efforts?
Yeah, so I'll just give a city example. So this isn't, but really the book I'm writing is about the city of Durham. So I lived there for a long time and did a lot of things there and have a lot of data from there. And when I taught a class at one point, and my students interned for the council, and one of their assignments was to investigate changing the pay of the council. And so they wrote these memos, they presented them to the council. I don't know how long they sat on them, but within the last couple of years, they did move their council pay to, I think it was like $36,000 a year. It was a fight, but they were able to do it. They obviously had the resources. Durham is a growing city, and they were able to be able to afford it. Now, though, right, so I don't know if it changed the amount of people who are willing to run. They have an election this year, and I think it's going to be a lot of people declaring. But then I think the sort of the flip side of it is now when people are disappointed in the council, they always bring up that pay raise. They'll be like, and you voted to pay yourself all this money, and I don't see the outcomes, right? So it's not just like, we raised it, but of course it does support those council members' lives. Many of them still do have other jobs, but before I think they were making, I want to say 6,000, but don't quote me. It was not a lot of money, but now again, it's up to 36, which, sort of up to you if you how much money you think that is in your spirit. But, right, but they did do that. But again, now it's almost like the reverse, right? Where it's like, now we pay you all this money, 36,000, and you need to, right? Like, and I'm still, right? So but it did happen in a place where, North Carolina is also in the news right now for foolishness, so we're not alone. But in a place where sort of red and like those politics are really at a head, the city of Durham is a place where they wanted to have at the city level, like city minimum wage, the state shut it down because it's Dillon's rule, right? So they're at that tension as well, where there are things that they probably want to do, but they can't because of state law. So it's not like it's not California or something, right? So it's still a tough place where there are those politics sort of fighting against each other. So yes, last question, because I see Andy.
Okay. This is a really interesting point because I feel like it's not talked about enough. I'm curious to know if you have experienced or if you have heard of any conversations or know of any board positions that are paid for, because I was visiting Portland last year, and instead of funding, while they still fund their city councilors, but they also pay you to go to board, like if you're a member of the council of arts in the city, or if you are on the board of like of a school board, or even like any kind of they pay the people who are on boards rather than the people who are elected. Do we have any like cities in the like this region that do something like that? Or do we think that that's something that could be envisioned here, like locally?
Yeah, so we actually learned a lot about that doing our research for the Human Rights Commission, that there are some cities where, because, right, like if you're gonna make a new board, like please justify it, you know, and sort of have these things. And so in some places, there are models where they pay board members. So if I'm on the planning commission, and they usually, it's not very much, they pay like $25 a meeting or something, it's capped at a certain amount. But it is just an incentive structure so that, again, people like you all who are probably like, I'm busy, I don't have time. Not that $25, you know, you can buy some coffees every month with it, right? But that it is an incentive to participate. And so it is a model. Again, my outside of Oklahoma ways, I think it would be a heavy lift here, but I think it is a potential route that maybe a conversation gets started so that young people, right, people are sort of like, I don't have time to be on the council, but I do have time to be on the Arts Commission. And when I get my $25 a month, I'm doing X with it, right? Like, it's probably still taxed, y'all, let's be real. But whatever, right, that it's still something. And yeah, so I think that that is something to think about. And my sense is that in those places, the level of commitment, right, they're not constantly not making quorum, right, when people are probably showing up because that money, I mean, there's tons of economics research about like what those little incentives do. So yes, I think it could be something. You know, I'd be willing to like work on it, but I don't know how successful we'll be. But I'll still try.
We should.
We'll talk. Okay.
I'll add a footnote to that. The election board members, by the grace of the state legislature, are paid $35 per day for a split shift to officiate the elections
Well, okay.
in each county.
Some lunch. It sounds good.
Honorary.
Yeah.
We did give a pay increase in this election, or this legislative cycle.
Okay. Okay. All right. Well, thank you all.